One thing about me is if I have an idea for an app, then I will need to build it out like a first version of it. Otherwise, I will not be able to get it out of my head. Luckily, with AI tools, it's really, really easy to do that now. So I figured I'm going to take you along for the journey so you can see my entire process of how I do this. Okay, the very first thing I do is go to Perplexity.ai and just make sure that this app doesn't already exist. And so I asked it, is there an app that lets you listen to podcasts and allows you to take verbal contextual notes based on the parts of the podcast script? That's the app that I have an idea for and that I want to build out, even just as an internal tool for myself. It gave me this answer, and I clicked into some of these existing apps, and nothing served the exact purpose of what I'm talking about. So, my step two is to go into Claude, and here's my prompt that I'm going to be asking Claude. I want to create an app that allows people to pause the podcast and take verbal contextual notes based on the parts of the podcast transcript. The intent is to allow for more actionable notes versus random notes that are uncategorized and out of context. Ask me questions for clarity and summarize this app concept for me into an MVP, which, if you don't know what that means, it's a minimum viable product or minimum viable prototype. And that's always my goal for creating the first version of these apps is an MVP. Okay, so I always ask it to ask me questions for clarity because I just want to make sure that it's on the same page as me. Okay, so let me ask a few key questions to better understand the concept. When you say verbal contextual notes, do you envision users speaking their notes that get converted to text or typing them directly? Speaking. And then number two, would users need to upload, import? What are you thinking? Sorry, I should have read that aloud. Are you either import the transcripts manually, or would you automatically fetch transcripts with this? Automatically fetch. So what I mean by actionable is actionable meaning it has context about what is being spoken about in the podcast. So a user can write notes during those time stamps, and the app would help provide additional context to the otherwise random notes. I hope that makes sense because sometimes I'll be on a meeting or even just, I never take notes during a podcast, but I should and I would. I think that would make them a lot more valuable for me to take away from because I always have some of my greatest thoughts during a podcast about how I can apply those to my business. And then they're kind of lost because I don't write them down and I have a million new thoughts. So that's what I mean by random notes is just bursts of out of context notes that might show up in my notes app. I should have told Claude that just now, but hopefully it gets the vibes. Usually it does. Okay, cool. Here's the summary. I'm not going to read that aloud, but it looks pretty good. Okay, so now I have the basic concept thanks to Claude, and I'm going to create a prompt that I can then put into Lovable.dev to actually build out this MVP first version of the app for me. So I'm going to say create a prompt for this MVP with the following, and then I'm going to copy in this text that I have that I always use when I'm creating a prompt. Basically, I just need the core features, technical requirements. My preference is Vite and React because I've used these in other projects and I'm pretty familiar with it now. I didn't say this earlier, but if you're new here, I'm non-technical. I clearly don't really know what I'm doing as far as coding, and you'll see that, but I'm able to get by pretty well just using natural language prompts and making sure that every prompt is intentional and as well structured as possible. So I'm just going to put that in. I didn't say for Lovable.dev, which it may or may not even know what Lovable.dev is. It's an AI coding assistant, or I don't know if they'd call themselves an assistant. Ideas to apps in seconds. Oh, it did create a prompt. I thought it was going to go and create a mock-up of an actual app because Claude loves to do that. But this looks pretty good. Let me take a couple of seconds to read through this. Okay, this looks good. Honestly, this looks a little bit more than an MVP. Let me see if I can narrow anything down. I think I'm going to take out remove. Well, I don't think I can remove the automatic transcript fetching. Pare this down to Ultra MVP. We'll see what it does. Because like I don't need the recent episodes history, for example. Okay, cool. So it did take that out. Okay, great. Yeah, like for example, it's just showing a pre-generated transcript for proof of concept for testing. So instead of actually installing the necessary backends for if this was a full production app, it's basically giving me mock data. I think that's the assumption that I have. So I'm going to copy the contents from this. We'll go into Lovable, and this is the free version. So I want to be really, really conservative with my prompts. Let's press create. The free version has a rate limit after a certain number of chats, so I want to be careful about that. Oh, I didn't even mention, this is my first time using Lovable.dev. I think it's comparable to Bolt.new, which is what I usually use. I was doing something on Bolt.new earlier, so I ran into my rate limit there for the free version. So that's why I'm trying Lovable.dev for the first time. The interface looks pretty similar. So right now it's building everything out based on that prompt. Okay. So it said it created it, and now it's spinning up the preview. Wow, pretty cool. Okay. Let's see. If there's knowledge, context, or custom instructions you want to include in every edit in this project, set it below. Okay. So I could use Supabase eventually when I want to have user authentication. For a full production app, I would do that. Right now, again, I just want to test it. So I'm going to say that. How can I test this app? I just realized you cannot see the chat. Okay, so it wants an audio file to test the player, and oh, it will ask me for microphone permissions in my browser when prompted. Let's see if it does. Yeah, it does. Okay, I'll allow it while visiting the site. Wow, apparently it's working right now. I don't know where that was supposed to go. Okay, but anyways, let's add an audio file. Let's see, how do I do that? Oh, it used a public domain audio for testing. Okay.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation...
Okay. It says the demo note should be visible with its timestamp and transcript context. Okay, so a couple of things about what I just tested there. When I press the start recording button, it should pause the podcast so I'm not talking over it. And then when I press stop recording, it should resume the podcast. And then what else? Also, it did not generate the note. So, okay, that's my feedback. And it's going to take that feedback and edit accordingly. So it's identifying the components it needs to change in the code, and hopefully it'll work. This is crazy. I didn't think that it was going to even have the mock audio file. I thought I was going to have to do that and that it was going to be a whole production. Okay, so, oh, you saw the error, but it resolved it on its own. That's pretty cool. Okay, I've updated the app to pause the podcast during recording, resume after stopping, and generate notes. Nice. Okay, let's test it.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation. 7 years dedicated to the our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation.
Okay, so I don't know what it did exactly. I need to recreate that, but I think it started playing the podcast when I pressed.
Conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal.
Okay, it's all messed up here. How do I even say this? When I pressed start recording, it didn't pause the podcast. Also, when I pressed stop recording, it started playing the audio over the other audio. Please review the code and fix this. Okay. Hopefully that will straighten it out. We'll see. It also didn't generate any indication that it was actually listening and taking a transcript of my voice. And I am curious about that because it didn't have me connect any sort of API, any sort of voice transcript API. So I might have to probe that and ask, like, are you actually using any sort of API? Testing, 1, 2, 3.
7 years ago.
It did it again. Okay. Are you using any API or program to record and transcribe my voice? Let's start there. Okay, it's simulating this. Oh, it's creating a demo. Okay. So, yes, implement real text or real voice and transcription functionality. And I will provide. Oh, okay. I was going to provide an API key, but let's try Whisper Model from Hugging Face. It'll likely walk me through the directions on how to install this. I'm getting nervous because this has been a pretty long chat so far, and I feel like I should be close to the limit. Oh, okay. Apparently it implemented the real voice recording and transcription, but it didn't even ask me for any sort of passwords. Okay, let's try it out. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
7 years ago, our fathers brought forth.
Okay, this kind of makes me want to go. I was going to say look at the code, but I guess in Lovable you cannot look at the code. That is different than bolt.new. Okay, anyways, it still does not work. Do you have the demo in there still? Remove it so it can listen and transcribe my voice. Okay, I ran into the rate limit. Okay, that's unfortunate because I really felt like we were getting somewhere. This is kind of a more complex app than I'd usually do. I've been able to do a lot of apps without running into the rate limit, just to get that MVP up, but I'm still gonna post this video because I think it's important to see how far you can get on the free plan. What I would do now is take this code, I can connect it to GitHub, but I should also be able to just download this code somehow. I don't know if it's in publish. Let's see. I guess if I just, yeah, I can just connect it to GitHub, which I'll do in a second, and then download it on my computer and work on it from my computer in Cursor, which is very, very similar to what I've been doing here, let me open it up and just show you how that does work. It might look a little bit scarier to a non-technical person, but this chat and composer works very, very similarly to Lovable and to Bolt.new. It just doesn't have as friendly of a front end for non-technical people. But Composer essentially acts like an agent the way Lovable was doing, where it's finding the best path and making kind of assumptions on what it should do next and just executing on that. Along the way, Cursor will ask you, like, do you think I should do this? And you'll say yes or no, like proceed, or it'll have you accept a few things before you actually change your entire code base. And for that, it's a lot more useful because then you can be selective about what actually changes within your app. So this is where I build out the real things, like my current app, lowhangingfruit.ai, which is a directory, but this is actually the back end of Low Hanging Fruit that I'm building with Cursor. And right now I'm working on actually a course module page, which is really cool. Oops, there goes my camera. Which is really cool because instead of having to use some sort of software to host my course, I can just build it myself now. It's been pretty crazy for that, and it's working well. So, yeah, I just wanted to show my process, and I might continue building this out in Cursor if people are interested in seeing how it goes. This is a really, really basic front end design, and I have a lot more ambition and plans for this type of app, and I might just use it internally for every time I want to listen to a podcast and take notes while listening to the podcast. So let me know if you have any questions on this. And what else? Okay, my camera also decided to die, so here I am on my webcam instead. But if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. Sorry we couldn't build out the full thing here, but I look forward to making more videos. I just wanted to show the process of basically quick iteration because it's possible now with the tools that we have on hand, and I think that it's a really, really valuable step to get anything that's percolating in your head onto, I was going to say paper, but it's really the screen. So I think those who are quick to take action will be very successful because practice makes perfect, and you're going to build a lot of apps before you land on the perfect one. Every time you go through a process like this, it's just making you a stronger builder than the last time. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this one and want more. Feel free to comment any video ideas you'd like me to make in the comments below.